players gather to cast powerful spells. Some of the oldest and most powerful in the history of Magic the Gathering. Aether Vial, Chalice of the Void, Griselbrand, and many others. Battling head-to-head in brutal combat, they all have one thing in common: to uphold their legacy and the search for eternal glory.
The Eternal Glory podcast is sponsored by Cardboard Live and TheEpicStorm.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Eternal Glory podcast. My name's Anurag Das, and I'm joined here today with Bryant Cook and Mr. Wilson Hunter. How you guys doing?
I'm alive.
Passionate, enthusiastic.
Wilson looks like he's having an aneurysm, so
Wilson is literally frozen right now.
No, I'm doing great. It's great to be here. I'm really excited about this podcast. And to be honest, I've been spending a lot of time practicing my fantasy baseball draft for tomorrow night, where Bryant and I will compete against one another. And
Wilson and I are nerds on many levels.
It's adorable. So, unfortunately, guys, due to schedule conflicts, Jerry was not able to join us this week, but we are in the works to make plans for him to be on the next podcast. So look forward to that. Just covering up all other things, though. We are now, upon popular request, on major platforms, including Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Casts, and Stitcher. Thank you, Bryant, for getting us there.
You're welcome.
And I think there was a request from over the pond from a specific Mr. Whiteface's Callum Smith to get us on floppy disk. Looking forward to that, too. So for anyone back in the 1990s, we got you. And also, most importantly, check out our website at www.theeternalglorypodcast.com. Actually just created entirely by our loving one and only Mr. Cook, who put lots of hours into it. I'm pretty excited about it. It looks really clean, like really, really clean. And we hope to add on to it as we, just as we go on.
yeah, so we have a grab bag of listener feedback because we value your opinions and your feedback. Legacy is a wonderful community with many vocal individuals with a lot of opinions. And we do this because we enjoy talking about Legacy and we want to hear from you. So our inaugural episode had a Reddit post, and we had a couple people respond with some very nice Reddit comments with interesting topics. So take it away, Bryant.
So our first comment was from Jack A. 1983. Maybe the presence and power of Dragon Stompy has made 3-color Delver a little awkward, and the reason that Blue-Red Delver and Blue-White Delver did so well is because they have a safer mana base. I think we can all agree that the Salamander is not a zombie fish, but maybe Blood Moon Proof lands plus Salamander is better than a zombie fish? ?
Thank you, Bryant. That was beautiful. So I'll take a first stab at this, if that's okay. I think this is a very insightful question / answer. I think mana bases matter. I try not to get in the weeds, though. I'm not sure it's as specific as the matchup of Blood Moon against the ability to play Basic Island in your Delver deck. However, I do think the more consistent mana base of Blue-Red is absolutely a factor in why it's doing pretty well. I think the number one reason is aggression and the fact that it's by far the best aggressive Delver deck. But I think that Jack A. 1983 makes a good point here.
Yeah, and from my perspective, so I've mostly just played with basic lands, since forever. And I think it's mostly just about like casting your spells in the first place, right? That's actually just really, really important in a format like Legacy, where you have the most powerful cards available to you. So you're really, like, decks are really good at stopping other decks from casting spells. So you look at cards like Chalice of the Void or like Blood Moon, for example, or even like Counterbalance or, whatever, like Daze, Force of Will, all those cards. I think for that reason, just even like mitigating the impact of a card like Wasteland is actually super, super useful, because at least it guarantees that, you get to make your plays on turn 1, 2, and 3 and not just get completely snowballed over.
So I think that while Blood Moon isn't the entire reason, I think it is a third of the reason. So when you look at the premier control deck of Legacy, it's Miracles. It often, at least good lists that are Anurags, run 2 back to basics. And back to basics is pretty good against a lot of these decks. So you're playing around both back to basics and Blood Moon. Then on top of that, the other major strategy in Legacy is Delver decks that are on Wasteland. So pair all 3 of these together. I think that has a lot to do with why we're seeing so many basics like this blue-red and blue-white Delver deck.
Yeah, and also let's not forget about the elephant in the room, or I guess the elephant that was in the room, Deathrite Shaman. Like, Deathrite Shaman is gone now, right? So, you can't just get away with playing whatever mana base you want to anymore. You can even see, like, the presence of 4-color decks just completely gone, which makes sense. But even, decks like Grixis Control, for example, they've got, like, 3 or 4 basics at this point, because they're struggling to keep up with all the mana denial and things like that. Or you just can't go unpunished with the 3-color mana base, I think, in the face of Wasteland and then other strategies like that. Honestly, if I had to take a stance on it, I would say that, the Dragon Stompy deck, even if it is like a turn 0, turn 1, whatever Blood Moon deck, I kind of like that, because it does keep the format, like, bounded, honest in a sense.
So while we're on the topic of Dragon Stompy, it's somewhat on topic at least. So I don't want to talk about the results from this weekend. I just want to loosely mention them. But there was a lot of ant that was going around the Star City Classic this weekend. Previous weeks, Blood Moon has not been a great metagame choice because people are aiming to beat it. Now that people are shifting to ant to beat those other decks, do you guys see these Blood Moon prison decks coming back to beat ant?
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable point, Bryant. I think that the Blood Moon Stompy style decks were probably decent anyways, and I think that now is a primed opportunity for them to shoot back into the metagame for sure.
All right, so why don't we move on to our second question?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So, as strange as it sounds, not trying to discredit Cali in any ways, but I agree with Bryant's assessment on Blue Red Delver. I started doing some testings with it. Light Up the Stage opens up this avenue that was not well known prior to Syracuse. This is from our beloved Twindom, one of our favorite listeners and show contributors. So what are you guys' thoughts on this?
So my immediate take, so I'm very happy for Rich, very happy that he won. If there's a player that, deserves a win, it definitely is him. But I've heard a consistent qualm by people who have picked up the deck, in after his win. And a lot of the people are just like not really satisfied with Light Up the Stage. Delver aficionado Bob was just like, he's not really like convinced about it, at least as far as I'm aware. And then even, players like Rich Shea who have tried out the deck, they say that Light Up the Stage is a little bit clunky just because, Terramander is very good at connecting, dealing points of damage, has flying, but it is just like still a requirement to the card. And at 3 mana, it is just unplayable, right? Light Up the Stage is just not really a playable card. So I don't know, I feel it's like you have to flip the Delver, connect in the air, or you have to have the Terramander in the early opening hands so that the Light Up the Stages that you draw, you play 3 of them too, so you're very likely to see them in the opening hands or in the opening turns or whatever. And just having it be in your hand and not do anything is kind of irritating. So I don't know, it's definitely a build around me kind of card. And that restriction could just make the deck a little bit more clunky than it, needs to be.
So I'm not going to argue against someone that's agreeing with me, but I would like to mention the fact that Light Up the Stage is essentially just another copy of Charticores, and these Blue-Red Delver decks aren't playing Charticores, so it seems like people playing Light Up the Stage are just excited to be playing new cards rather than anything else. And I get that because testing new cards is very exciting and fun, but I think long term we're going to see Light Up the Stage disappear from Blue-Red Delver. It might still see some play and burn.
Yo, 1 mana is a lot less than 2 though, right? But I do know what you're saying. Bryant. I'll take the generalist approach to sort of wrap this one up and say The cool part of this comment shows that SCG Syracuse showed us that there's still some innovation happening in Legacy. I think that there were some new cards that made waves. Winning List had multiple new cards in it. We have basically a new Delver of Secrets and a new draw spell, and I think that's really interesting. So, yeah, that was my favorite thing about the comment. Not necessarily like the specifics of what we do with these cards, but just the fact that Legacy is changing and that there's a Delver deck that I think is probably the most affordable Delver deck in the format for people to get into and to build a new competitive deck that's doing really well.
Okay, so we're talking about Delver decks that are affordable and competitive, and I want to talk about a non-stock Delver deck that actually won the Legacy Challenge this past weekend, piloted by our very own Daniel Goetschel. I guess I'm not allowed to say he's our very own, right? Because he's not really our very own, but Ghoul Dukat, MTG, just, I don't know. At this point, it's safe to just call him really good at the game. Took first place with a really innovative take on a Stoneblade, Delver, I don't know, deck, archetype, whatever. And so to break it down, you can check out the list on mtggoldfish.com. But in his main deck, he's got 4 Stoneforges, 4 True Names, which is really interesting, and then 1 Palace Jailer with a couple Snapcasters, 12 cantrips. 12 cantrips? No, 12 counterspells. So like the Forces, 2 counterspells, a couple Pierces and Snares. Yeah, it's packed with a lot of heat, like a very, very unconventional list. And I think it's got a really good fair game, at least the way the main deck is built. But the sideboard has 4 copies of Delver of Secrets. And I want to know what you guys think about that.
Well, I will say, I know you talked about this the second I heard you say it had 1 Palace Jailer in the list.
Oh, yeah. That's my new pet project. I'm going to get it to work. Watch, 365 days from now, we're going to look back at this podcast and be like, wow, Anurag, you were right about Palace Jailer.
Instead of talking about Palace Jailer and Sideboard Delver Secrets, why don't we introduce today's topic?
All right. Well, we could definitely do that. So, part of, just us getting together and us sharing our experiences with you, we want the viewers to know who we are, to get to know a little bit about us. So right off the bat, Bryant, kick it off. Tell me about, why you play Legacy, what brought you into the game.
No. I'm going to give some background on this a little bit more, and we're just going off the cuff here. Okay. So this is, Anurag and Bryant have been doing a lot of technical work on the podcast. Bryant has spent hours upon hours on our website. Anurag has been doing tons of editing and been playing the game probably more than any of us, plays it every day and been streaming and all that. So part of my job was to make these show notes, and one of the topics that we came up with that I tried to put some thought into as well is, why do we play Legacy? So that's sort of the premise of this episode today, is we want to let the listeners get to know us better. This is the beginning of a hopefully long and prosperous podcast, and what better way to introduce an episode 2 than to basically spend the time in talking about why the 3 of us started playing Legacy, sort of our journey through the format, where we are today, and really just have a storytelling segment. So that's the thought behind us. Sorry, Anurag, to sort of steal the thunder there, but yeah, I just wanted to give some background, and I guess we'll go ahead and start with Bryant's story.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Wilson.
Thank you. Yes.
I do appreciate that. I like that clarification. It's important. All right, Brian, take it away.
So back in 1922, when I started playing Magic, or was it 2002? I think it was 2002. I grew up in Syracuse, New York. I still live here. And when I went to my local game store, people just played Magic. And Magic in Syracuse, New York was Type 1.5, the predecessor of Legacy. While there was Standard and Extended, people pretty much worshipped Legacy, and that was the format of the area. So when I had started playing, it's all anyone ever talked about, mostly because MTG, the source, was partially founded out of Syracuse. Colin Chilbert, who's a good friend of mine, he was one of the original administrators on the source. And then in the next big town over in Albany, there was another founding member, Peter Rotten, for those of you who have been around for a little while. And then in Seattle, there was Bardo, and I apologize, but I do not remember his real name. So back then it was workshops, bazaars, and mana drains. Those were all legal in Type 1.5. And a very poor Bryant started off with Suicide Black, Sinkholes, Nantuko Shades, fun stuff like that. Later graduated onto a deck Anurag might like, Blue-White Red Landstill. And right before the format shifted into Legacy, I found a new love with Angel Control, the first deck that I had played for years with any moderate success. Angel Control was a deck that played Exalted Angel paired with Skeletal Scrying, and when the format had shifted, everyone was so afraid of being a slow deck. So Ancient Tombs were actually in our control decks at the time, with cards like Thirst for Knowledge and Chrome Mox. It was a very wild time to be playing Legacy.
Wow. Wait, so skeletal scrying is basically like a more efficient stroke of genius, is that right? So you'd gain life, and then you'd use the life as a resource to draw a ton of cards. What else was in that deck?
Back then, cards were a lot worse, so it actually ran Telling Time to smooth out your draws along with Brainstorm. Keep in mind, this is pre-Ponder. So, like, back in 2004, when Legacy was first created, there was a lot more room for fun. So you got away with cards like Exalted Angel and Skeletal Scrying. Legacy today is very lean and cutthroat, where back in 2004, 2007, there was a lot of room for trying things out. Factor Fiction was a huge player. It was a very different time. Like Goblin Welder was still playable.
To be honest, you're saying a lot of cards that I'm nervous about Anurag hearing, because Telling Time has some clear applications to the deck that he plays now. And
all right, yeah, I'm gonna say it. I when Jace got unbanned in Modern, Telling Time was like the first card I put in a draft deck. I was like, oh, we're gonna miracle some people in Modern, and then I just walked away. I was like, all right, no. But that format sounds pretty fun, pretty interesting. What are some of the things that you played against back in the day?
So this was pre-Vengevine, but Survival the Fittest was very popular in my area. So back then, Survival was like a toolbox deck. But this was the format that made me fall in love with Magic, and more importantly, Legacy. So this was all pre the Epic Storm, but I found a love in my community and a love for Legacy out of what I didn't know was a very unpopular format for Magic at the time. So when people moved to Syracuse, they'd be like, "You guys play Legacy? Why?" But to me, why would we play anything else?
Yeah, no, that's very cool. What'll be interesting, like I'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's sort of how the stories overlap. In MTG, the source for many people listening was probably a significant impact on their Legacy story early on. It was for me. So before I knew anybody playing Legacy, I was just sitting on my computer, camped on the source, reading about different decks and archetypes, and ran into Bryant, who was not so hidden with his handle on the source.
You mean Bryant _ Cook was not very secretive?
There you go. That's right.
I feel like I know someone with that name.
Not sure.
No, that's very cool. Very cool. So basically, like, you were playing Magic at the time, and Magic was Legacy. You play these decks. I can definitely relate to Suicide Black. Later became like Eva Green, I guess, when Tarmogoyf is printed, which is
it definitely did.
Obviously, yeah, people love that mana denial strategy. That was very cool early Legacy deck. I think what our listeners are probably all wondering is what's the story behind the Epic Storm, and how did you go from trying out a lot of these different types of decks, mana denial, to control with basically a black stroke of genius and an angel and all these different things, into playing a combo deck that kills people in turn one?
So at the time, Solidarity was very huge, and anyone that knows the story behind Solidarity, which is the Reset High Tide deck, also knows that there was a counter to Solidarity, which was a deck called Nausea. Terrible deck names, but that was Legacy back in 2004 to 2007. So Nausea, the story comes from two people playing a limited event in Virginia, which was a huge Legacy hotbed at the time. And someone had cast a Nausea, and someone responded with Solidarity in order to win a match, and this is how they decided to name their Legacy decks. Well, this Nausea deck caught my interest as a control player because I didn't really understand how to play combo that well. So it was a Helm of Awakening based deck where you would run cards like Chromatic Sphere and the actual eggs from Odyssey. I don't remember the names of them anymore because I've gotten pretty old, but this was the start of my combo interest. And with the unbanning, essentially, from the splitting from the reserve list from Vintage with Legacy being created, Lotus Petal became legal, Chromox became legal, Lion's Head Island became legal, and everyone had been trying these decks that didn't really work, with 4 main deck diminishing returns and things like that. So I'm sort of credited with creating the first working Storm deck, but it's not all just me. There's been people along the way. So as I mentioned, I fell in love with the community, and a big part of that was joining a team when I was like 16 years old, which was the Epic Syndicate. And those guys were essentially my older brothers. I was the little kid that they let tag along. They were all much older than me, but it was a great relationship, and I learned so much from them. And that really helped me become more competitive and get even more into Magic.
That's awesome, man. So, by the way, real quick shout out to Felipe from Brazil, listener, who asked us to talk about deck names. Just gave me the reminder that he sent a comment about that, and you're touching on that. So I think that's definitely something that we'll talk about in this episode, is how some of these deck names came to be. Some of them are nuts, and they don't even describe the decks very well. But I mean, as I'm listening to you talk about this, I'm sort of geeking out. To be honest, I always sort of fanboyed over Bryant before meeting him, because Bryant's one of those stalwarts of Legacy, basically one of the I would consider like a founder of the format, even though he may not feel that way.
I certainly don't.
But it's very cool. I mean, it's like it started as a small community of people and a few, I say a few, but maybe even like a couple distributed places. Like there's Virginia was a hotbed, New York was a hotbed. You know, you mentioned there's somebody in Seattle. I guess there's a couple people in Canada or whatever. But small number of people innovating early on, creating these awesome archetypes. Just, it sounds like it started as like, you know, ideas and trying lots of different things. I mean, you all had thousands of cards at your fingertips. Maybe talk about how did you basically try different combinations of cards to come up with these crazy kill decks that, you know, that basically killed people instantly, that ended up as this highly powered machine that is tests, but you're talking about eggs and all these other things. Like, what was your process of getting to that point and testing different cards?
So one of my favorite innovations, going back a little bit before TES, but when I had tried Solidarity after trying Nausea, I tried a list that became Sorcery Speed, but also ran Bubbling Muck. So Bubbling Muck is actually a Black High Tide. And so I paired High Tide and Bubbling Muck in the same deck, but instead I used Snap and Cloudifairies. And on top of that, you were running 8 Underground Seas essentially, because at the time, Watery Grave had just been printed. So your deck just ran all fetch lands and then these 8 Underground Seas. So you lost a Wasteland pretty hard, and that was one of the first things that I learned is if I'm going to be taking 2 damage and losing to Wasteland, I didn't think I wanted to be playing a land-based deck, so I wanted to be playing more actual rituals. So at the time, Rite of Flame didn't exist. You had Dark Ritual and Cabal Ritual and Seething Song. So a very young Bryant didn't want to play those cards yet because he thought Culling the Weak was super cool. So my first list of the Epic Storm back then had a much worse name that I will not say on air, but it ran Trinket Mage and Priest of Gix to use with Culling the Weak. And eventually, through MTG The Source, some people talked me out of cutting the creatures and trying out the rituals. And then about a month later, the love of my life had been printed, Rite of Flame.
I guess Culling the Weak got better, I'm doing air quotes here, at some point when you could fetch for a Dryad Arbor, but that was a little later on, and people still haven't necessarily broken that interaction. But Brian, this is the first time I've heard you say this before. This is sort of nuts. I feel like we're almost like brothers from across another universe. I was trying this Bubbling Tide deck, definitely not with the same clout or success as you, where I would Merchant Scroll for a Clutch of the Undercity.
I don't even know what that is.
So it's an instant that it's a 4 mana cost instant. It's some bounce effect. Doesn't really matter at all. It's a blue-black instant. It had Transmute, but you could Transmute for a Tendrils of Agony because it costs 4.
Oh wait,
And
I
so
think
it
I
was
remember this. It costs 1 blue-black, and like you can bounce a permanent and they lose 3 life?
Yes, something like that. I don't even remember what the card itself did. It was this chain of like I had tons of mana because there were basically 8 High Tide effects. And Merchant Scroll is obviously a broken card. So you can Merchant Scroll for the Clutch and Transmute for the Tendrils. it ended up just being a much worse deck than the deck that the Hatfields obviously broke. But
That would be Spiral Tide?
That is right. Which is also a sweet deck that I had stolen from me at some point, which was a very sad story. But yeah, so all that being said, that was a rant right there, but very cool to hear that as part of your story of getting to your true love, which was Rite of Flame.
And now that we've gotten to my one true love, Wilson, why don't you tell us why you love Legacy?
Yeah, totally. So for me, let's flash forward a little bit from Bryant. So Bryant was basically one of the godfathers, one of the founders of the format. When I got in, it was, already established. There's this group of people in New York, like Bryant, Virginia, what have you. 2009, right? I was in college. I'd played F&M a lot in high school. I started getting a little more competitive when I was in college. And then I started craving more as far as the deck builder goes. So I got sucked into the source. And I was literally like, I think that, to be honest, I played some extended PTQ in Roanoke, Virginia. And I played Affinity, and I was losing to Zoo a lot. And was just really impressed by the efficiency of the deck and extended Zoo. And so I got involved in the Zoo forum on Legacy and the source, because that was a pretty competitive deck at one point. And yeah, so I know that's a little more information actually than I even wrote in the show notes, but I started getting deeper in the format. I got 3 friends involved. And for me, it became a social thing where me and my closest friends, we just built like the most competitive Legacy decks. We went super deep on testing. Like we built, lands, we built Tess. I was definitely a follower of Tess, and one of my friends played it a lot, and I played it some. Team America, which at the time was basically like a Bug Delver deck without Delver.
Ran Sinkholes originally.
There you go, exactly. So, there's a lot of these Legacy stalwarts that made these decks, and, these deck names obviously are very interesting. But yeah, so we built this like gauntlet of decks. We got really deep into it. We tested a ton. I mean, for me, it became like a huge time sink where in college, I felt like people were involved in like frats and doing all sorts of social things. And for me, it's like never been my scene to really feel like I'm wasting a lot of time on stuff that doesn't matter a ton, which is funny to say because I know Magic to some people doesn't matter, but it was an awesome cerebral activity that I made a lot of friends in and spent a ton of time playing in college. Got more competitive. I tested so much for my first GP. So I went to Grand Prix Providence in 2011. We basically stayed up to like 4 a.m. when I was an RA, and
I didn't know that was your first Grand Prix.
It was my first Legacy Grand Prix. So I played in an extended Grand Prix Atlanta before that. Didn't do well. I actually lost to Jody Keith, who ended up top 4ing, and a couple other people. But so it was my second Grand Prix. It was my first Legacy GP, my first big Legacy tournament. I ended up top 8ing, and it was super exciting. So I had a lot of takeaways from that, which was that I had such a high bar for myself at the event that I realized like this is a really hard game to play, and I overestimated how like perfect or awesome everybody would be, and in reality everybody's just giving it their best shot, and like it just takes so much effort to become good at the Legacy format. I did well. Of course, some of it was because of luck, but to be honest, like the preparation I put in so many hours, and me and my friends tested for months on end for this one event. It's something I can't do now at this point in my life. But it was definitely very cool, and it springboarded my interest in the format. From there, I got on my first Pro Tour, which I did poorly in, but I went 4-4. But at the time, that did not day 2. But it still like gave me that taste of competitive interest where I kept playing, and I was really interested in Legacy, and I kept pursuing it. And to me, that was a huge part of it. I made lifelong friends at that point, and the interesting thing was I was engaged, and so I got married, and the first Pro Tour I ever went to was 2 weeks after my honeymoon. So
that sounds very exciting.
Were you playtesting during the honeymoon with your wife? Just like, this is how we're gonna play out this matchup, and
so it was sort of nuts. We were on our honeymoon in Antigua in the Caribbean, and I used a computer one time while we were there. I checked the computer, and the Pro Tour was all of a sudden this new modern format, and I was like, okay. But because I was so happy and smitten, and obviously doing all these I was in love and snorkeling and doing all these things. I didn't even think about it. I put minimal testing into Modern. I went 4-1 in Modern, but I 0-3 the draft, losing to John Finkel and some other talented people. So,
What was your Modern deck?
it was Naya Punishing Fire Kavu Predator deck.
He did say that he loves Zoo.
Oh my.
I did. I loved Zeus so much early on, and it was cool. It had a lot of removal spells in it. It was actually interestingly decent against some of those early broken decks because those decks relied on creatures like Splinter Twin and Infect even.
I
So
remember
it's
the
pretty
Infect
neat.
deck was the breakout deck of that event. It was the Blazing Shoal deck, essentially. You would remove Progenitus, I believe, or what is it called? It's like Kami of the Infinite something. It's like an 11 mana red 7/4.
Would you believe me if I told you that I played against that deck in a league the other day, like no less than a week ago?
That's interesting. So the whole point behind my story is that, you know, a little bit of success in the competitive nature. Like, I'm a very competitive person. I think this will segue into Anurag's story, but it led me into getting really involved, meeting good friends. So as everybody listening knows, like, Magic people are a certain type of people that are not necessarily normal, but we all get along with each other really well. And I think we can relate on a level of, just thinking about things that are strategic often and spending a ton of mental energy on it. So I really appreciated that. And even today, I have a lot of really great friends that are involved in the game. So even talking to Bryant here, like, Bryant and I have only become friends recently, but, you know, doing a baseball league together pretty soon, it's like I feel like there's a lot of overlapping interests with people that enjoy spending a lot of mental energy on their hobbies like this. I think
Random
it's very
aside,
cool.
it is kind
But
of, I mean, so from my perspective, right, like when I first got into this, I never thought I would really make this many friends, but then you, like, I mean, everyone's a person, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, they have their own subset of interests, and like the stereotype of like what quote a nerd is and things like that. Like, I mean, so when I started playing, and I guess I'll take the reins here. When I started playing, I was young, pretty young. I guess we all were, and you know, those sort of things. I was in high school, so all those sort of things like mattered. And so, you know, years later, it's pretty surprising to find, I don't know, just like, yeah, just learning more about people, learning about all the things that you have in common with them. And, I love it. I love it so much. It's great. So why do I love Legacy?
Yeah, Anurag, why do you love Legacy?
I guess, to answer this question, and first of all, I'm going to warn the viewers right now. I have one
Listeners.
Yeah, listeners, I'm sorry, podcast, right? I have one fatal weakness, all right? And that is that I cannot tell a story for the life of me. So I'm going to just try and like give you as much as I can, but I promise I'll ramble. So the two of you are responsible for like being like, yo, keep it in line. So
I feel like this is something you should have told us in advance.
no, it's great to do it live. This way everybody knows, right? So now it's, you guys are responsible for, you know, whatever happens today.
All right, have your Bill O'Reilly.
no, let's
moment.
encourage Anurag. Bill, right? So let's encourage Anurag here. Okay, so Anurag, this is a podcast. People are listening to this because they're freaking bored, right? Like they're driving. This is why I started listening to Legacy podcasts. I spent hours on the road on a sales job, and I wanted to freaking listen to people that were talking about stuff I liked and were into Magic and all sorts of other things. I mean, I had a listener on the other podcast I did who drove a forklift all day, and he said that he would just plug in his earphones and listen to the podcast, and I think that's sweet. So take your time, sit on back. We want to hear your story, Anurag.
Growing up as a kid, I think it may have just been like the household that I was raised in. My parents are just like first generation immigrants. They moved in like 1991. I was born a year later. In middle school and high school, it was always just about, you need to get the best grades. You need to be number one. Number two is not an option kind of deal. You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, I was not like that smart, but I will say that, you know, my mental prime was when I was a sixth grader. That's when I was just like crushing it, you know, compared to everybody else. So I know it's just like the mindset that, you know, my parents instilled into me. Like, I guess, the easiest way to put it is like, you know, I was that kid who would, you know, not really go outside and hang out with friends, but I'd be at home and my dad would give me like math drills, right, for the competitive number sense tournament that's, you know, happening that Saturday or the week after or whatever. I think I was like a state champion at one point, and then so on and so forth. But yeah, so like that kind of mindset was just like drilled into me to where when I do something, I want to do it like really well. You know, I want to be the best. I don't want there to be any question, and that sort of it made me a very competitive person. Just in the sense that, you know, I wanted to win everything. I wanted to, whatever I thought was really interesting or really cool, I wanted to be known for it. And so around just like the 10th grader or something like that, one of my best friends introduces me to Yu-Gi-Oh card game. And it was super interesting to me because, well, I don't know, I had never seen anything like it before. And the other thing that stuck with me was I was losing like a lot. And it just made me really frustrated, you know, just because of the who I am. And after that, it was just like just kind of like you, Wilson, right? You just spend hours and hours and hours and hours, pour your life into it. And, you know, up to a certain point, like around like 2012 or some, like, you know, second or third year of college is where I found Magic, you know, and I started playing Standard, you know, eventually moved into Modern. And I was a birthing pod player, believe it or not. I loved me some, was like Malira, Kitchen Finks, you know, Infinite Life, that sort of thing.
You don't seem like the kind of guy that likes grinding out value.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, so they banned Birthing Pod, and then I started looking for a new deck, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do, right? And around this point, this was like, you know, years ago, where the Star City circuit was like it was 2 days, but it was like an open per day. So Saturday would be Standard and then Sunday would be Legacy. And so around that time, I stopped keeping track of Standard because, you know, I'd phased fully into Modern, and Legacy was starting to interest me, just, you know, seeing some of the powerful interactions, seeing brainstorms and ponders get cast and things like that. And it was around this time where I wanted to learn more about Legacy. I was just hungry for content, devouring everything, you know. I had the monthly subscription to Star City Games Premium, reading like all of the, you know, Todd Anderson articles and so on and so forth. And, you know, Deathblade was really just what I wanted to get. And so with my first paycheck off my internship, I bought, you know, some Underground Seas, some Tundras, some Dark Confidants. That card was sick. And, you know, just time went on. I eventually started playing Shardless Bug. It was an interesting deck. I remember losing in an IQ with the deck to Infect, which I thought was a great matchup. And then, you know, years later, I'm looking back and kind of just like laughing, thinking, oh, ye of whatever.
Anurag, can I pause you for a
Am
moment?
I ranting?
No, not at
go
all.
for it.
I just wanted to mention, I think that was part of the golden years of Legacy, is those 2-day opens where every single weekend you could tune into Star City Games and watch an open on Sunday. Traveling to them was miserable. Living on the East Coast, I did it a lot. You would get home at like 4 a.m, but that was just not great compared to what we have now. But for coverage, it was amazing, and I think that it did a lot for Legacy's growth over time, and it introduced the format to so many different players.
Yeah, actually, I mean, the closest thing that we have today is we have like the Sunday Legacy challenges, and I know there are a lot of players on Twitch who will stream those. So it's kind of cool because nowadays you get to see like 7 different players go through 7 rounds of Legacy, you know, Sunday afternoon, midday, whatever it is. Yeah. So I eventually switched over to Show and Tell, and I might not look like a Show and Tell guy, but I definitely did resolve, you know, a number of hasty Emrakul's and Gristlebrands and a lot.
Wait, is this real? So you wrote this on the show notes. I deleted it because I thought it was a troll.
No, I solidly played Show and Tell for 9 months.
Wilson, would you believe me if I told you that I knew this already?
I believe you. I'm a little offended that I didn't though.
It's okay. Well,
although I do have one disagreement with Anurag. He looks like a Show and Tell player.
I look like you know what? I'll take that, because then when I go turn 1 Island Ponder, no one's gonna see the turn 3 Monastery Mentor. Not even me.
I wouldn't. Wait, do you play Monastery Mentor in your deck?
Yeah, I do. I think it's pretty good.
All right, sorry, go on.
Wow, how far we've come.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't play like, you know, like an egregious amount, like 4 or something like that. But yeah, all right, Wilson's got a really big smile on his face right now. So yeah, so I played Show and Tell for 8 to 9 months. You know, I think the highlight of my Show and Tell career was scooping the finals in an IQ or to someone who needed the points, and I felt like a champion. I was like, yeah. But then like after that, it just went downhill, and I started like thinking critically about my matches. Again, like I'm super competitive and I just cannot handle losing. I take losses really, really badly. Like they just stick in my mind for like, hours and hours and days and days. And I realized that up to a certain point that, the deck that I was playing was holding me back, I guess, kind of. I don't know. Show and Tell is admittedly, or in my eyes, it's a linear deck. There are some skills that you need to know to play the deck, like cantripping properly. But, sometimes your opponent will just play like Hymn to Torok, and you might not have the Spell Pierce, and then suddenly it's just like, well, you're drawing dead, and Delver's turning sideways, and all the sort of frustration just gets in your head. And so I around this time, Mr. Reader Rabbit, wrote an article discussing something about Legacy that I still think is very important to this day. And he was analyzing why he had such a poor record against a player, Joe Lissette, consistently just losing to him. And he concluded that, in a format like Legacy, the key thing, the constant, is that you should really just play a deck inside and out over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because Joe's been playing that deck for I don't even know how long. And then Reed was like, yeah, so I think at the end of this day, I'm going to pick up one deck. I'm going to stick to this deck. And like you even see like to this day, Reed really only has like a couple decks at his, fingertips that he uses. I guess like Pox, Elves, and maybe Miracles. Those are the three decks I would mostly associate him with.
I think Pox is maybe more of a modern thing. But yeah, I mean, I definitely know what you're saying. Like he's played those three decks in Legacy. So
yeah. And so at that point I was just like, all right, look, I want to become a better player. I know I can do it. So let me just pick out one of the most complicated decks in the format, something that, appeals to me, that I like a lot. And I came across Miracles and I was like, this deck is absolutely sick. Sensei's Divining Top, Brainstorm, it is just Sensei's Divining Top. That card was really, really difficult to play with at the time. And I was like, yeah, let's dive into it. And I mean, breaking it down now, I can tell you exactly what it was about the card that I loved. It's just that, every 1 mana you spend, you get to look at three different cards. You get to put them in any order, and eventually the number of options and configurations and things like that, just like millions of combinations exist just in the span of one 40-minute match. And to me, that
Anurag, you just did something that I absolutely hate.
What?
Explaining what a card does. It's so for example, I've had this discussion with my good friend Royce Walter. It's like when you ask someone why they play something and they're like, yeah, I play Manamorphose because it costs 2 mana, filters 2 colors, and then I get to draw a card.
Wait, who plays Manamorphose?
It's an expression. That's the card that we use as an example, but Royce Walter and I. But that sort of stuff just drives me insane. Like it's a weird thing that just, I don't know. I hate it. Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, no, I mean, so the card, other cards don't give you, that many options throughout a match, right? And I really, really do like that, that such a card existed that, just unnecessarily complicated a game.
To be fair, many of our baby listeners, this card may be a relic of the past, sadly.
That is true. Yeah, rest in peace, Sensei's Divining Top 2016. I do like that. I do think that card was just absurdly powerful looking back at it, and I'm glad that it's gone. But yeah, no. So I mean, that was the card that just mesmerized me, made every single game a puzzle that I had to solve, that I had to and also it's something about it. Do you guys ever feel like you're the hero when you play one of these games where you have to outsmart, out-trick your opponents and things like that? And I put myself in that pilot's seat, always starting the game at a disadvantage, kind of because the nature of a control deck or the nature of Miracles at the time. And I mean, yeah, that sort of vision is what I have. That's how I see Legacy, as kind of just the one format that makes the most complicated puzzles, with the most interesting solutions.
It seems like we have a lot in common, Anurag. That's one of the things I enjoy about Storm, is that every game is a unique puzzle and you need to navigate your way through pieces of hate or counter magic or things like that. And it often comes down to outwitting your opponent. So sometimes you'll main phase a card that a Brainstorm that you want to get countered or something along those lines in order to open up a new avenue for you to win. And a lot of it comes down to mind games or body language, especially Storm. People try to read your face, and if you stonewall them or give them a fake emotion, it ends up being a lot of value later on.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. I want to. There's a lot to unpack here, and it's awesome. So I just want to say, like, I've been friends with Anurag for a little while, and it's definitely been started with because of the game. But I would like to think that we've become friends. This is my first time hearing a lot of these things about your story, and I think it's really cool. Um, it's the competitive part is really neat. I think that the competitive angle is something that all three of us share. It sort of brings us together. I have teamed with both Bryant and Anurag in different events.
Ooh.
I'm not gonna say.
Hey, Wilson, I just want you to know I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't make you choose. It's me.
I will say I had a better GP outcome with one of my teammates, but I don't know if that was necessarily their fault skill wise or if it was the deck choice. But
My round 8 opponent had 2 Pyroblast in his main deck, Wilson. What do you want me to do?
No.
about
I'm
that?
definitely not blaming you. You both were awesome teammates. My point is that you were awesome teammates because I felt like we related on this competitive level where, I mean, friendship isn't all about that necessarily, of course, but it was cool that everybody was self-motivated to win in a way that was just like there was this intrinsic need to beat the opponent. It's sort of like what you're describing, Anurag, which I think is very cool. It's something that is built into your identity, and I think that we all share that in some different way. And I think it's really cool that you shared like the part of your upbringing that sort of built that, and it's neat that you're able to be introspective and understand that. So I think it's really cool. Something that another point I wanted to make and really target in that is not in our show notes is that you talking about wanting to be the hero. This is an interesting topic. I don't think everybody necessarily wants to be the hero. I know that I've listened to another podcast and a very skilled and proficient storm pilot, Cyrus, CCG, who has talked about wanting to be the villain in the legacy format and talked about how Magic needs more villains. And I do think that people have different motivations. Like I will say, like I don't take Cyrus's perspective necessarily like wanting to like actively embody the villain, but it is motivating for me to be rooted against, and I think it's neat when people have the angle of wanting to be the hero or the villain, and it causes some sort of motivation within them. I think it gets into some sort of deeper personal psychology that gets into gaming that I think is really neat. And I just sort of picked up on you saying that, Anurag, and I think that totally makes sense. Do you think that being the hero and sort of piloting an archetype and becoming like the face of an archetype, does that motivate you in your streaming? And I mean, you have a huge stream following. I've seen you with 250 concurrent viewers on a regular basis. Is that something that motivates you to foster that community and continue to put time into that?
I never really thought about that. I'll be point blank honest with you. I never really thought about it that way. I mean, I guess we could dissect that. Let's see. So I was going to mention though, like, the other reason, and this is definitely a newer reason, that I will admit, like, I got a little bit like burnt out of like Magic and Legacy at some point, and then I started streaming a little bit in the start of 2017, and I don't know, that just like ignited the fire in me again. Kind of like the whole like I really wanted to be good at streaming, and it's just remarkable. By the way, just shout out to everybody who watches, participates, streams, anything. It's amazing. But yeah, I think streaming is another reason why I love Legacy, because it allows me to, and I know this is a reason like everybody will say this, but like it's really about the Legacy community, right? Like I have met you guys multiple times in person. Every time we go out to an event, every time I fly out to an event, we're the ones, getting a drink and dinner, after 9 grueling rounds of Magic. I know I can go and have a good time. It's not just about the Magic, right? Because I know I'm not going to like, top 8 every single event that I go to, but I always have that backdoor prize of just like overeating, like, and having a good time with you guys. And I think the part about streaming that I really enjoy is that like it's on almost a daily basis, or whenever I choose to fire up the stream, that I get to hang out with just this amazing, awesome community that is, well, I mean, my Twitch chat likes can handle miracles for as long as they can, which is incredible. Also, props. But yeah, it's just like Magic in general, Legacy specifically, right? Like, I think it's super cool. I love that we are. I'm making hand motions right now, like making like a giant like encompassing hand motion, but like that is just we're an inclusive community. Like yeah, Legacy. I don't know. It's great to be able to share that. I guess it's my love of Legacy that I'm able to share with other people, and that is also just something that I love, that I can do that.
I can get behind that.
Yeah. What I was gonna say, what I like about your stream, Anurag, is you get very in touch with your chat and including them as part of the process of building and playing your deck. And I think that's obviously like a very important part of live streaming, which is really hard to do. You basically become an entertainer and basically a partner with your chat, as far as you're basically teaching them how to play the deck, but playing it with them, which is really interesting. You do that really well, and I think you're a very likable personality. And I tune into your stream because I think it's definitely entertaining to watch, and it's captivating. So I want to publicly apologize for any amount of trolling that I do, but but it's sometimes tempting. But yeah, Bryant, like, you've been streaming some recently.
I have.
We did not talk about this before the show. I just wrote in the show notes my observations, because when I see the Epic Storm and Bryant pop up on my alerts for Twitch, I definitely tune in, because I think it's awesome Magic content to watch. So maybe just from your perspective, talk a little bit about the community. I mean, generally you have a large breadth of content. You have a website, theepicstorm.com, where you have a lot of content creators that you're managing, create content about the archetype. In general, you're always innovating on the deck. I've seen a spicy number with a new mana rock involved in our favorite combo deck. And how has live streaming been part of that process for you? And is it something that you're starting to ramp up a little bit, or pursuing, or maybe just talk a little bit about that?
So Anurag is a little bit more dedicated to streaming than I am. It's something I do when I'm bored. I don't have a set schedule, and when I stream, it's pretty much just when I feel like it, and when I won't get in trouble for not paying attention to my fiance for a little bit too long. So I fit it in when I can, but to me, I love the Storm community, not just TES, but Ant players as well. Wait, hold on. Let me finish my point. Over the years, I feel like... Yeah, go ahead. Over the years, I feel like the divide between Ant and TES players has merged a bit, and there isn't this hatred that there was once during 2007 to 9 for very little reason. A younger Bryant was a little more immature, and I've gained some wisdom over the years, but I do enjoy other thought philosophies on Storm, and it's something that I've tried a lot over the years. So I've tried lists of 2 Paths and Flames and 2 Cabal Rituals, and I've learned a lot from Ant players, but I've probably learned just as much from the Miracles community. It's getting different thought philosophies and changing your outlook on things that will make you grow as a player. So I really like being involved with the Legacy community, because I feel like the best innovation comes from getting outside of your comfort zone rather than just talking to similar-minded people.
I will say what I've really liked about the test community is the organization that you have. So, I mean, everybody knows that you are Tess. I mean, you're the creator, you're the spokesperson, but really what you fostered is a lot of people that really embody that, and also create content and innovate on the deck and put a lot of time into the deck, and are motivated to sort of be part of the deck identity. And I think that's something that, the Miracles community has definitely tried to implement. I know Anurag has become a big leader in that community. There's a lot of big names that have innovated on Miracles and have done really well in that. But to me, it's like Tess is sort of the pinnacle of like archetype identity with the community surrounding it that is identifiable. And I think that's very cool.
I have a background in marketing and graphic design, so I'm pretty good at building a brand, or at least I like to think that I am. And part of that is getting others involved. So as you mentioned, I have a team that I work with, and I don't want to say works with me or that work for me, because that's not the case at all. These are bright young minds, some of them older. I don't know why I said young, but they're all people that are very dedicated to their craft. There's 7 of us, I think, now that write for the website, and we even have a couple people that are just video. But it's all people that are very dedicated and hardworking people, but they're also great people to bounce ideas off of and things like that. They do a fantastic job, and I can't say that enough about them. One of the things that I've learned through being a manager of these people for the epicstorm.com is how to guide them into, I'm trying to use my words here, it's pretty difficult, but grow them as well as grow you. And it's not always easy to manage people. I've certainly made some mistakes in the past and wish that I had said things or guided them in a different direction, but it's all a learning process. It's something that comes with age and experience, and you're not going to hit it out of the ballpark every time. So it's been a interesting and rewarding experience having the epicstorm.com and this great community around me.
Yeah, well, I will say, like, the brand is very cool. I ordered some merch from you. I
do have a shop, theepicstorm.com/shop. Shameless plug.
Yeah, there's absolutely no shame. I mean, this is a podcast. People are listening to it. They know that we all have our brands here. But I will say that I drank a little bit of alcohol. I was having a jovial evening, and for some reason, some of the messaging on the Epic Storm merch really touches me. It really hits home for what I enjoy. So I ordered some merch. It arrived when I was not home. Lindsay got it. She questioned me about what came to our door. It was definitely a fun experience. But yeah, I drink from the pint glass that I ordered, and I definitely have a couple, at least one T-shirt and a play mat that are certainly fun to play with. So Anurag, we need to see some mentor. Actually, no, we need to see some Palace Jailer swag pretty soon.
Oh, it's coming. You best believe.
On the eternalglorypodcast.com, if you look in the header, there's a monastery mentor in the background, just for a good friend Anurag.
Oh, snap.
I just want to say that I did innovate the monastery mentor tech, and okay, I can't even fake it, Wilson. I'm sorry. I tried, but it didn't work. Okay.
I don't know what you just did. I feel like you tried to troll me, but within a millisecond recanted.
So, Wilson, why don't you tell us a little bit about your streaming and Cardboard Live?
Yeah, so to me, I haven't streamed in a long time, and it's really hard to do, which is why I really respect you guys for growing your communities and for doing it. But the whole point of Cardboard Live and the startup I'm working on is to make streaming collectible card games a more viewable experience by, revealing hidden information, using image recognition on actual tabletop streaming, but also the digital clients of like Magic the Gathering, for example. But maybe more than anything else, incentivize content creators by giving commissions on purchases through on products through the stream. So this is something we've been working on, which is if you watch Bryant stream so much and you think that he's your teacher and you want to buy tests, Bryant will actually make a commission on the purchase of your product through a large retailer. And this is the tech we're working on. It's work in progress. We're still beta testing a lot of the stuff and working with Twitch closely on it. But, I decided to go from a job I didn't really care about at all to doing something that I felt like was a big need in the community and something I'm passionate about. So now Magic has become sort of my livelihood and trying to follow this passion here. And yeah, obviously both of you are big influences on me because you're the people that really inspire me to do this, is seeing people that put a lot of themselves into their decks and their craft. And I think that there's a huge world of basically what I would refer to as like indie content creators who put so much time into providing awesome content for a community of people that are very loyal and want to support them, but like the tech doesn't exist to directly support them through streaming. And that's what I'm trying to solve with Cardboard Live. So obviously that's sort of my plug, but that's what I'm putting all my time into. And to be honest, like I used to play a ton of Legacy and I miss it. Like I'm not able to play as competitively as I was even a couple of years ago. And a lot of that is because all of a sudden I'm putting all this time into a Magic startup, and I've played the least amount of Magic I've ever played. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just sort of what happens. I'm focusing more time on like Cube, for example, because if I'm going to a GP or what have you, it's usually for work or streaming purposes, and when I want to play Magic, it's spending time building my cube or playing the cube. So yeah, that's Cardboard Live, and that's what I've been doing.
It's pretty cool. That's actually pretty cool. And I honestly, like, I've only heard positive feedback about Cardboard Live. Personally, like as a streamer, I think it's really fantastic. I look forward to maybe make a little bit of cha-chang. But also, no, I think it's super useful. I think it is extremely useful compared to what's out there. At least it's just like Star City's adopted it, Channel Fireball's adopted it, right? So it's like the real deal.
Well, I will say what we have today, I'm happy about. I'm glad the community is super excited about it. But we're doing so many things, basically using AI for determining player advantage in non-traditional games like Magic, helping people purchase stuff through live streaming. I mean, there's complicated ways that we're trying to solve this with tech that we're really excited about. That's coming. That's a little more exciting than interactive deck lists on a Twitch stream. But so that being said, like we're happy that the communities receive what we have today in such a positive way. But we're also excited with what's coming soon. So we're happy about the positive feedback, but Anurag has been the only negative voice in the community, and because of that, we're just really happy about the positivity.
So, hold on. I wanted to give Wilson some credit. He doesn't give himself enough. Last year, Wilson grinded to silver, I believe, and he was playing a lot of Magic to the point where I literally played in 4 Grand Prix in 4 weeks, and Wilson kept on playing more after that. He did not stop until he hit silver. So I feel like he's allowed to take some time off because he had a grueling few months in order to achieve his goals.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I'm glad, Bryant, I appreciate you saying that, because sometimes it's hard to like take a breath and like appreciate your own competitive accomplishments. I don't think I really ever did that because I dove straight into the startup. But it was cool to be able, like, I ended up playing in, I think, 4 Pro Tours in a row. I made silver. It was just, it was a cool accomplishment. And it's the kind of thing where, like, once you get there, it's just an awesome feeling to play against some of the best players in the world. And not just a feeling because I feel like I'm necessarily like them, but it was just, it was a very cool experience. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it was a lot of work to get to that point. And we'll see what happens with the Magic Pro community. I mean, I think the game is headed in a positive direction, but obviously we don't know exactly what's going to happen with some of these tournament series, and I guess we'll just continue to hope that the opportunities are still there for people.
Well, that's one of my concerns right now with Magic as a whole, and not even necessarily just Legacy. But so I had someone tell me after I top 8'd GP Columbus a million years ago that I would never get on the Pro Tour again. Like, that was my one opportunity. I was a very poor college student and I couldn't go. So it's been a goal of mine ever since to make the Pro Tour. I've come close a couple times, but unfortunately have not made it. So now with all these changes, it's making me reevaluate what I want out of Magic, because I'm not sure if I want that anymore. I wanted to experience a Pro Tour at least once, but maybe it's no longer what I should be reaching for, because it seems like the rewards for being a grinder are no longer there, and grinding Star Cities doesn't have a whole lot of appeal to me. The Players' Championship is nice, but it doesn't have the prestige to me that the Pro Tour has. So maybe just being the best content creator I can be, but at the same time, I'll admit, it feels a little bit lame.
Nah, I don't think you should feel lame about that, because I'm kind of in the same boat where I've really realized that, like, I love Legacy enough, actually, yeah, so much, that I would rather focus on, like, just the well-being of Legacy than, like, my own, I guess, like, Pro Tour-related competitive gains. So, like, I would rather play Legacy, just on the weekly challenges that may not necessarily amount to much, than test standard to get, on the Pro Tour, for example. And I think, I mean, look, the Legacy community, I'm maybe speaking out of my scope here, but I think they appreciate everything that you do, that Wilson do, that I does, that every content creator who provides, consistent content out there for just, people to eat up. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be mostly on us to, keep the community alive, keep the community running. And honestly, I think we do a really good job at it. I think there's always room to be better, but I mean, we're gonna get there, and I think that's cool. I don't think you should feel bad about that at all. I love you, Bryant.
Thank you, Anurag. You're beautiful.
No,
I feel like I've gotten to know you guys a lot better. Just
wait.
by doing this podcast.
Hold on. Brian didn't say I love you back. This is.
It'll come.
I love you, Wilson.
Oh my God.
I love you, Bryant. Hey, just give him some time and space, Anurag. Don't force it. But I just want to say, like, I really appreciate this conversation. I feel like I've gotten to know you guys better just by doing a podcast, which is really cool. I hope you're both recording your audio right now on Audacity.
Yo, let me
so
ask
that
you
we
a
don't have to
personal
redo
question,
this.
Wilson. What's my middle name?
Henry.
Very close. Well, this is something that I don't actually say to people, but you know what? I'll let you know. I don't have a middle name.
I knew that.
I have a pet.
It came up over dinner at Star City Games Syracuse.
I have a pet
Oh
name.
my gosh. Did it really?
I have a pet name. It's what my parents call me.
What is it?
Bulltoo. You know, like the
I also heard that.
Wait, what? Brian, how much have I told you? I don't remember telling you this at all.
Enough for me to get your social.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, on that note, I guess we could talk about where we're going to be in the upcoming weekends, what big legacy events are going on, and where you might be able to find us. How about that? Brian, what are you doing in the upcoming weeks?
Well, April 6th, you can find Wilson's big, bald, beautiful head and myself flying into Boston for the Leaving a Legacy third Open, hosted by Gerald, James, me, and Patrick, Eleanor, Uglo.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So Bryant will be competing. He will be trying to defend his title from 2 Opens ago, correct?
Correct.
And I will be talking about Bryant's matches that he is winning, hopefully. So I will be commentating.
Or if they go super bad, I might be sitting next to you again.
That's right, which was fun. That was very fun to do. And Rog, what will you be doing?
I, on April 6th, will also be commentating on matches. I will also be playing some matches I think there's a Legacy PTQ online that weekend. So that's where I'll be. I'll be streaming it live, of course, because, that was the most fun, the best way to play Magic.
I didn't realize those 2 events were the same weekend.
I know. I think the Wizards announced it maybe a couple weeks ago. Definitely after Leaving a Legacy announced their event. So, but also this weekend is the first Legacy Quarterly online. So
I can't wait.
I'm pretty excited for it too. But for the viewers who might not be, deeply embedded into the Moto system, they introduced the quarterly format challenges a month or 2 ago, and basically this is how you can play non-standard formats. So I'm talking Modern, Legacy, Vintage, and Pauper, and you can play those formats to qualify for the Pro Tour. And today is going to be the first quarterly of not today, but this week will be the first quarterly event, and the top 8 will queue for another playoff, and then the winner of that queues for the Pro Tour. But this week, Sunday, there's going to be a big tournament. Keep an eye out on Twitch. I'm sure a lot of people will be streaming it. It's going to be exciting. But beyond that,
I think you forgot to mention a very large, prominent Legacy event, Anurag. Grand Prix / Magic Fest / Ridiculous Names / Niagara Falls. And I believe it's April 19th to the 21st. And it is on the American side. Will I be seeing the 2 of you there?
Oh, yeah, I'll be there for sure. I don't think I've missed a Legacy Grand Prix since 2014 in the States. So I'm going to be there for sure.
I flew to Birmingham last year. Well, it was a pretty good trip. The best parts were not of Magic, but it is what it is.
Did you meet our British Legacy comrades?
I did. I did meet Callum and Francis. Callum said some words that you're not supposed to say in America in front of my future fiance. But apparently they're very popular across the pond.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to our European and British Legacy friends. I say those differently because they are definitely different groups.
Marcus this week published an article on theepicstorm.com about Spiral Tide.
Marcus, by the way, not to deviate too much, but he posted a very Swedish picture of his family on Facebook recently, and I liked it. I appreciated it.
All right, now we're just getting weird.
But no, I do think it's cool that the legacy community is global and that we meet all these people online, and if we travel, it's cool to meet everybody. But
all right, so going forward with the Eternal Glory podcast, Wilson, Anurag, and I have decided that this will be a bi-monthly podcast, meaning that there will be 2 every month, and we will be looking to go live hopefully Thursday nights. So keep an eye out. Wilson, Anurag, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to say we appreciate your support as a legacy community. We're just trying to get started right now, so if you can share this with your legacy friends, that would be great. The hardest thing to do with a new podcast is to reach people. So please share it. We appreciate that even more than your donations or what have you. But also, Bryant put a lot of time into creating an awesome website for content. He's awesome at branding and design, so please check that out as well.
Speaking of donations, though, if you do appreciate the Eternal Glory podcast, you can go to theeternalglorypodcast.com, scroll all the way down to the footer, and click the donate button.
That's right. And what does our money go to? Mostly dog food for Anurag's dog hunting.
Hey, she's worth it, okay?
Blue Buffalo is not cheap. Wilson just chugged an entire beer.
Next podcast episode, Jeremy will be joining us on the show as long as he can fit us into his schedule. Really excited about him joining us as a guest. You know, he's been a role model for us.
Wait, hold on. Didn't he bail on us this week?
He did, but you know, he has a lot of things that he has to do. He has a lot of listeners he has to appease. We would just feel honored if he were to spend a few minutes out of his schedule to join us on our podcast. And, you know, we're excited to tell our listeners today that he will probably be here for the next episode. So be excited.
Yeah, we'll see.
On that note, guys, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Eternal Glory podcast.